All right. Jason posted this hand on Twitter, so I thought we could have a quick look at it. Um, it's pretty interesting, I would say. I think a lot of people just kind of miss this turn heuristic and end up just overfolding the turn. And then we'll look at why we don't bluff this particular combo on the river. Other hands that are like this do bluff the river, though. There's just one specific thing that makes this a bad bluff on the river. But it's very hard to spot. Um, so firstly on the flop, this hand's mixing check and bet. Prefers betting. If we go to the big bet here, it actually checks the ones with clubs with the backdoor flush draw suits a bit more often than this. Not really any small betting on flop. We're just basically betting big, leveraging this huge advantage we have in sevens for aces. We don't really bet kings and aces much because they need less protection, and sevens are the same relative hand strength as kings here, but sevens achieves a lot more betting, especially for a big size than kings do. Meanwhile, our best unpaired hands are also betting a high clip for a large size. And the actual class that we are checking is just going to be like this king, queen, king, jack, king, 10, king, 9. The rungs below that don't achieve that much betting big, right? Because you're not really folding out aces, ace X, and you're just folding out the dominated kind of suited kings that the small blind kind of flats pretty flop. Meanwhile, like the worst two suited kings we have, like betting big, for example, a bunch, especially when you have hearts. And then otherwise, it's kind of a mix across all the hands of a lower class than that. The suited queen, suited jack, suited 10, suited 9, suited 8s. These lower connectors with, a little bit less removal and blocking, like off-suited broadways, are quite nice to bet. And then, some of these kind of off-suited broadways themselves don't mind betting big as well, a bunch of the time, to give us coverage on those cards. But, important to have a very well-developed checking range aces checking most of the time. The weaker suited aces that don't do much for us betting big, checking then. For the same reasons that we just talked about with the suited kings. So let's see, if we go to the turn, on the 4, this board is as pretty much as static as it could ever be, and I think people just struggle to actually see what the relative hand strength actually means here. It's pretty tough, unless you actually do a bunch of solve work to see what the relative hand strength in this spot is. DTO's out of position betting range is just going to be so you can see here, he never uses small, medium. He only uses this big size, and it's around deuces, threes, fives, sixes in this case. A couple of solves might have sevens here, but you can see that these hands are full houses that are strong now and get called by a bunch worse a bunch of the time, and can go for two streets of value, which is a lot of people miss as well. These hands are just very strong given check flop. And the hand that's going to be quite important for us to identify here that likes to play in bet check, which makes a 10 of hearts pretty bad to have, is ace 10. Ace 10. And he quite likes betting more with the ace of hearts and the other suits because of how we were betting the flop. So that's why the 10 of hearts starts to come into play as well, as you can see here. Ace of clubs, 10 of... ace of diamonds, 10 of clubs, 1%. Ace of spades, 10 of hearts, 18%. You can see relatively holding a heart is quite important for the strategy, given how in positions checking the flop. But yeah, as you can see, wait, if we can just go back to the betting range. As you can see, this is a pretty capped range, regardless, right? The best hand you have is sixes. Other than that, you just have weak houses and your best ace high. So when you're getting 2-1 against this range, and in position still holds aces and kings, and some amount of stronger ace high, you've got to defend the honor of your range almost. It's a very basic 1-A question when small blind's range is effectively capped, and you're always gonna have two overs basically to some extent against his value region. Obviously you can share cards if he's bluffing, and you can both just make a very strong house and you get stacked, and that's that. But you're getting 2-1 here, and you just need to not fold more than half the time, even a little bit less than half the time, I would say. But yeah, it's important to just demonstrate how few hands that actually is. You're gonna defend all your suited aces when you have them, which you have all these low ones off them, and then obviously you defend your best king high, king queen. But then you're just gonna mix across all of these king X suited, these queen X suited, and then as you get towards the 10 highs, the 9 highs, 8 highs, a bunch of these have to defend as well. 5, 6 are gonna, yeah, it's just one of those kind of 1-A problems. You just have 2-1, and you get to still reopen action on river when check to, and bluff. So if you see on the 8 here, when DTO checks, he's actually not checking these low pairs ever, so he's not actually bluffing those. It's just ace 10, the best unpaired that was bet checking, right? So that's the problem with having a 10 in your hand to bluff the river. you can actually see that, you know, you can just go ahead and just play a 2-street game here with 6s, 5s, 3s, deuces. That's just the effective nuts. But the ace 10 isn't quite strong enough. Ace 2 is the hand that's mixing. That's the hand that's on the line. So as a result, you can see why it's just not going to bluff with a 10 generally. Just not going to use 10-9 or 10-7 here. It's just going to check 10-9 and 10-7. But it is going to bluff like king queen. Obviously, you've got to remember your value region, like as played, is pretty condensed. You're mainly going to have like ace deuce, ace 8, and obviously like that small amount of kings and aces. I say small amount because of like how much we were actually defending the turn. Our king high doesn't feel the need to bluff here for the most part, you know. Just a bit of king queen doing it sometimes, but otherwise, I guess some of the effects around the 8. Maybe king 8 playing bet check, is that right? No, king 8 doesn't play bet check because it's just value betting against ace high. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why king queen was used a bit more than the others there, but I mean this should demonstrate why the 10's bad at least. Like ace 10, I think it's just an idea that like it's very hard to see unless you do a bunch of solver study that like ace 10 here is very strong for our position because in position was betting the better ace highs on the flop, very high frequency, big size against small blinds suited aces. And you know, like suited broad, like a little bit of the suited Broadway, that's a mixed defender and such like that. To the point that, you know, ace 10 just goes ahead and value bets itself as out of position, but then obviously can't value bet the river, just check. So like you're just blocking check fold. It's a very hard spot, but yeah. Hopefully this demonstrates some idea about defense frequency. It's just, you know, it's just a math problem on the turn, and then just realizing how wide our position can value bet the turn. Like it could take its best unpaired and value bet the turn, and then it checks the river, and then it's just like blocker effects around that. To the point that if you go to bit 21, it's even bluffing 9-7 suited in this line, which you actually have a pretty good amount of the time here, but never 10-7. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, it's a pretty cool hand though. I think there's a lot to learn there. And you know, there's a lot to be said about just doing some of this stuff in solves on like the most static boards possible and seeing what's applicable and such.